Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning to this episode of Nick Egan Times. On this episode, we have a magnificent guest. We have the legendary visionary executive, talent developer, business strategist, and industry powerhouse, Orlando McGhee. Orlando is currently head of urban music at ONErpm and formerly an A&R executive at Rock Nation and Warner Brothers. Orlando has helped launch Lil Jon, managed Future, signed E40, worked with Method Man, CeeLo Green, Goodie Mob, Jaden and Willow Smith, Crime Mob, Little Scrappy, Organised Noize, and Justice League. Orlando has truly been behind some of the most influential careers in music. Welcome to the legendary Orlando McGhee, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you. That was a great introduction. I didn't realize I had done so much.
Yeah, you're a legend. All right, let's jump straight into it. Take us back. Tell us about your life growing up and your family.
Oh man. Uh, I was born in Warrenton, Georgia, South Georgia here. I'm in Atlanta now. Moved to Jersey when I was about one, lived there till I was 12. Played baseball, learned to play baseball, actually street hockey, which was really, really popular in Jersey at the time. But believe it or not, I actually grew up on a horse farm in Jersey as opposed to in the big city. I grew up in Vineland, New Jersey there. Um, Got a love for music from my Uncle William there. He played the piano, played in the church. Took me to my first Jackson 5 concert. I'll never forget it. Greatest experience of my life to this day. Sat out really, really high in the rafters, but it was an incredible experience. Um, when I was about to turn 13, well, actually, about to turn 12, my mother decided to move back to Atlanta for a job. So we came back to Atlanta, and I've been here ever since. Um, and, just around in the heyday of Atlanta's music scene, when Lil Jon was in high school DJing and the guys from Organized Noise and the Dungeon Family, OutKast, Goodie Mob were in dance groups. So, those were the golden era. That was the golden era of Atlanta before the explosion of the music scene, but even before LaFace Records came to Atlanta. So, it was a big, big, interesting scene here. A lot of independent distribution companies, SMD Distribution, Southwest were putting out, Ichiban was putting out a lot of independent music. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but we knew who the DJs were, who the hot DJs were, and we would go to parties based off of who was the hot DJ. And I'll never forget, Little John used to have a party in his basement of his home when we were in high school. So I didn't even know who was, and I went to his house, not even knowing who he was back then. Just to go to a house party to hear him DJ, him and Emperor Cersei, and then meeting Big Oomp and the mixtape wars between Big Oomp, who owned stores before he even owned his record label. So he owned retail stores, and King Edward J. So that was the East Side. Big Oomp was from the South Side, and they would have big, mixtape wars between the DJs that they actually had under their crews. And you could hear them under the mixtapes talking about each other and different neighborhoods, and all the local independent rappers would be rapping on the songs. Kind of took a love for music there. Man, I didn't even think I was going to go into music. I actually ended up I was a manager of Blockbuster Video all through high school, and they started selling music, and I was in a district manager training program. I thought that's what I was gonna do for a living. I was gonna manage Blockbuster Video. Thank God I didn't decide to do that because obviously Blockbuster's gone now. But ended up going to working at Macy's, same thing as a manager, and meeting the guys from Organized Noise, deciding to intern for them. Then I ended up with a job in the mayor's office of Atlanta. I think I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. So I was special assistant to the chief operating officer of the city, who's right up under the mayor, like the deputy mayor of the city of Atlanta. Um, and met Rico Wade from Organized Noise, ended up interning for Organized Noise, who is the cousin of Future. That's how I met Future. I met Future when he was, man, 14, 15 years old back then. Um, and the rest is history. I manage Organized Noise now, believe it or not, even from that internship. And, you know, kind of built my relationship with the rest of the Dungeon family. And then Little John decided, hey, I see what you're doing over there. We're starting this record label, BME. Actually, it was Vince Phillips, John's business partner, who introduced me to John finally. Um, and they started their label. They were already working with TVT Records, They were doing a label deal with Warner Brothers. Kind of went from there to the chairman of Warner Brothers. Just, kind of saw the work that I was doing. When you work at a boutique label, you do everything. So I did A&R, I did pro marketing, promo, make show. I did everything, man. At admin, I did the A&R admin, everything you could think of. I answered the phones in the office, whatever it took. So kind of went from there to being noticed by the chairman of Warner Brothers, Tom Wiley. My man Naeem Ali kind of orchestrated that meeting, and he offered me a job. And kind of the rest is history. I was at Warner for about 6 years. When that flipped over to a new regime, we all got fired, and Future called, like, "Yo, kind of well." It didn't necessarily happen that way, but I started a management company. I was working with Nappy Roots and a couple other groups, and then Future had, unbeknownst to me, he had told a bunch of people even back then I was going to manage him, and then things kind of started to happen for him. And Rico kind of, came to me like, "Yo, can you make a couple of calls on Future's behalf about deals?" Called my man Naeem, who was consulting over at Epic Records for L.A. Reid. And, unbeknownst to us, they were kind of looking at him, but hadn't pulled the trigger. So we flew to New York 2 days later. Deal happened right there at L.A. Reid's office. And I wasn't managing Future at the time. I kind of walked away from it. And then Future called me maybe a couple of weeks later, like, "Yo, kind of got some things going on. I kind of need your help to kind of fix, what's going on." And Benny Pugh, who was the EVP over at Epic, was kind of like, "Yeah, I would love to have you around this. I think there's a lot of promise in it." So, um, and Rico kind of co-signed it. So the rest is history there. We worked together for about 9 years, 8 years. He became the biggest streaming record in Sony Music, based off of some of the strategies that we learned from live mixtapes. A lot of those guys at live mixtapes. Um, if you go back to hip hop at that time, they weren't doing well as in the sales arena of it. But I think sites like live mixtapes taught the consumer how to stream music because they were streaming it on the mixtapes on those platforms. So what we did, I was able to kind of go to the guys from live mixtapes and ask them for the back end data. So we got the back end data, gave it to the sales department at Epic at Sony, and they were able to utilize that to kind of push forward the narrative of Future being a streaming artist. And just that strategy alone kind of changed the game. We knew what it was because he had been the largest streaming artist on the live mixtape site, even over Lil Wayne at the time, for 2 years running. So once they got that information, and the crazy thing is, streaming didn't count on the Billboard charts, but it still paid. So, we kind of did some calculations and some math. We played a little hardball with Sony at the time to kind of renegotiate his deal, and get us something significant, a little better than we initially did. But because we knew where the recruitment lied as far as the streaming, we just didn't know how big it was and how valuable it was going to become. We knew it was something, in the future. So just that strategy alone kind of helped propel him to enormous success based off of something that, was a free item years, before. So after Future and we parted ways, I got a phone call from Benny, who had went over to Benny Pugh, who had went over to Rock Nation as the president of the record label, and I kind of came in to work with him at the record label and worked there for 3 years. Got homesick, I'll be honest. I had to move to New York. I'm an Atlanta guy. I'm a Southern guy. I love the South. Um, and when we parted ways with Rock, Emmanuel Zuns, the owner of ONErpm, kind of reached out through a friend of mine, Ken Matson, and I went to Nashville, met with Emmanuel, flew to New York, met with him one more time. Also had a couple of opportunities from some labels in New York, the big majors. They didn't want me to leave New York, but I kind of wanted to go home. So I took the position with Emmanuel, and I've been here, man, 6, 7 years now. And I've learned more here, probably in that 6, 7 years, than 20 years before in the music industry because it's changed so much and so rapidly. So, I'm older. I don't know if you can tell from my gray hair here. I'm 50 plus. So most guys my age are kind of aged out of the industry, particularly on the business side. And, I've been able to kind of learn a lot from him and the rest of the staff here. So I will push the narrative that we have some of the most intelligent executives in all of music just because Emmanuel is at the forefront of distribution and creative deals. Even whether they're master rights, we're just a music company as a whole, whether it's publishing rights, neighboring rights, um, uh, music as a whole, we're able to do more creative deals than anybody else out there because we were doing it before. The majors kind of shifted their way of thinking and the way they were doing business.
Great. I really like.
And yeah,
Yeah, go. Know what you're gonna
okay.
say?
No,
I
that
was
was it. That was it.
I I was just interested with ONErpm. How does that model work for anybody that for general terms? How would you articulate that to listeners? How it
Okay.
works, the model works.
The model works. Okay, great. I'll give you a prime example of a perfect scenario. You might have a kid in his bedroom putting music out at TuneCore, DistroKid, some just another platform.
Right.
Um, I could actually, sit down with that kid, maybe discover him by a record. And, where most people are interested in just that one song, I'm interested in the entire body of work, his entire catalog of releases. So I want to go in and say, here's an advance. Well, what's your thought process of how you want to do business in the future? I can do a master rights deal with you, or if you want to become Jay-Z, for that matter, right away. I could do a licensing deal with you, um, depending on how much money you want. I have a staff, an entire marketing staff sitting here in the office outside of radio and probably a publicist. We outsource a lot of that. Um, and, I'm discovering different kids in different walks of life from all over the world. Not even just kids, but, it could be an artist coming out of a deal. I'll give you a prime example. We had one come out of a major deal. It was a group. Never saw a royalty check a day in their life. Did a one-off project on them. They recouped. We put together a marketing fund for them. Did an incredible job. They went on tour afterward, and they get a check every month from the release of their music, and they're like, "Wow, we've never seen this." So our model is really kind of empowering artists uh, in the ownership space if they choose to do that, or if the model is something different, we can actually show them how to market and promote their music in the digital space like no other. Because again, we were doing it beforehand as an independent artist. There's a lot of work that goes behind, being an independent artist. So it's a real conversation of, are you ready to do this and kind of move forward? One of my first questions is when I sit down with a client is, what's your 30-day, 3 month, 6 month, 12-month, 18-month plan? And hey, maybe where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because if you're willing to do the work, that's great. But if you want to just walk in and hand me a finished album and say, hey, what should I do? We could give you a blueprint, but I'd like to have I like artists that actually have an idea, or a team that has an idea of where they see themselves or where they fit in the marketplace.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
we could
Shane.
actually help, put together a plan for them to move forward.
Yeah, and definitely with the marketing, you really help. Like, you really need marketing to actually get the person out there or the artist out there to, really get that traction.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we have what, 46 plus offices in different territories all over the world. So we're not moving like a traditional major record label. Being that I've worked for the major record labels, kind of seeing how when you want to move into, the internet has made everything worldwide now.
Right.
So, being able to market your product worldwide is a big plus. Right now in hip hop music alone, you're looking at the islands, you're looking at the UK, and you're looking at Africa right away. And we could actually move the needle and turn that in an instant, particularly with the internet. I could have a call with someone in Africa right now, send them the music. They could put together a marketing plan and move it the same way I would here in the US within 12 hours. Kind of working in a major system, you're kind of inundated with, oh, let me send this over. Let's see what label wants to deal with it, and let's partner on it and they get their market share piece of it. It just takes a lot. We've taken a lot of the red tape out of it by having staff in those different territories being able to move the needle and um, market a product internationally at the drop of a dime.
Magnificent. And tell me about your experience working at Rock Nation and Warner Brothers. What was, I guess, elaborate on what your time was like and I guess the experience of working for them.
Man, well, I start with Warner Brothers and I go to Ron.
Sure.
Warner taught me the business. You know, being at Organized Noise as an intern, they gave me access to everything. So I had all the contracts. I didn't necessarily understand it. There were a couple of people around that could give me information about it. Then I moved into BME. It was a little more business, but it showed me, okay, cool, this is a structure of a boutique label and how it works. And then moving into Warner, it was the corporate entity. So it was, okay, who signs off on what? What's the protocol on who does what? All the different departments. I had no idea that it took that many people to put a piece of product out. And this is a physical era where it went from physical CDs to digital downloads. So it was a very interesting transition from one to the other, just because you had to figure out what's what. I remember I think at Warner, we hired the very first digital marketing team. And I think musically was probably one of the first things that they were kind of pushing at the time of trying to help market music. This is the era. It was this, I think musically was even before, what was it? I can't even think of the first digital site, social media. I can't even think of the name of it. But yeah,
Facebook?
kind of sitting there, kind of trying. What was it?
Facebook?
Even
You talking
before
about social
Facebook, what
media?
was
Oh,
I cannot think of the name of it, but ah, I'll
yeah,
figure
I'll
it out
get
because you
back to
could
it. Yeah.
leave messages on. Yeah. But being able to see people kind of come in and innovate and seeing how far behind the record labels were as far as innovation on the major label side because you had so many people that were closed-minded. This is how the music industry worked, and this is how we're going to do business. Um, it was great to see Warner kind of take a little bit of a risk in the digital space and say, okay, cool, we'll at least have a marketing team to kind of figure out how to market the music. Um, and again, I learned how to be an executive there. I learned how, protocol and, what we're supposed to do, the proper paperwork that actually is supposed to go out. In the independent system, you may, kind of, you know, push the limits a bit. And then from there, man, going to Rock Nation was an eye opener. I'll say this, man, Jay Brown, Jay-Z, Tata, Desiree, they are some of the most incredible executives you could ever be around because the level of business that they were doing. You'd walk into the office and you'd see, multi-billionaires kind of just sitting there
Mhm.
wanting to pick his brain. So you know how you had that meme out there, dinner with Jay-Z or $1 million. You might want to take the dinner with Jay-Z because you never know what comes from that. And I remember one of my first meetings, I'm sitting there just with a company kind of pitching themselves to it was with Tata, and just kind of sitting there listening, like, wow, this is a really big deal. So I learned a lot as far as big money deals, and I had a lot more responsibility there. So I learned how to manage a budget.
Part of your job at the moment.
Wow. So because of the margin of the deals that we've done, the volume of business is very high in order to make a profit. So, um, just constantly being on the go, always discovery, discovery, discovery. It's all about what's doing, what's next, what's hot, what's the trend, staying up on everything that's kind of moving, um, and what's innovative also, because you want to be ahead of the game. So, you want to be able to culturally be able to say, okay, cool, this is what's next. Let me get ahead of it and try to orchestrate a deal that's fair to that particular client and that's fair to us on the back end also. So everyone walks away from the table happy. And when it breaks and makes money, no one feels taken advantage of.
Right. And who are the most talented artists you've ever seen?
Man, I have to say, number one is Future. Um, Without question, I've seen him go in the studio and put together melodies and lyrics that are just profound. Musically, wow, it's a big one. Um, I'm gonna go through eras. I think Lionel Richie, LA and Babyface together. Um, and I'm gonna be biased here, Organized Noise. And there's a kid named 30 Rock who is a young producer now. He's really incredible. But as far as artists, I really like Future. I like what Drake is doing as well. And Kendrick. So it's interesting to see the battle between Kendrick and Drake. I think what Drake does, even if he writes it or doesn't write it, he knows what sound he should be behind his lyric. And he knows what pattern he should use on a song. There's a real art form to that. Otherwise, there'll be multiple superstar artists that have had, careers that have lasted as long as his. That's a real art form in itself.
Wonderful. And who's the easiest artist you've ever worked with?
The easiest?
Yeah.
Man, Ludacris. And I've never really worked with him, but man, Ludacris is probably the great. Well, it's two. Ludacris and E40. Ludacris, just because he's such a nice guy, man, Ludacris makes you want to do whatever he asks because he's so polite, nice. He's not difficult, it's just polite. It's just very easy to work with him. And the best person is E40. E40 is very easy, but he's tough in the same respect. He likes things done the right way. But he's such a nice person. Even if it's not going the right way, he knows how to express that without demeaning you. And just as a person as a whole, I love him, his family. I've had a chance to experience his kids, his wife, watching him as a multi-platinum recording artist, very wealthy from music and in traditional, just regular business, man, it goes a long way in him just being very approachable. I can call him right now and answer the phone and whatever I have to express. It could be with the music or it could be outside of music. He'll, give me his thoughts on it.
Excellent. And when you look back, I guess you've had such a tremendous career, you've done so much. What's a pinch me moment that really sticks out for you when you reflect and you go, wow, that's happened or this has happened?
Man, we did a radio show in LA. I think it was Powerhouse with Future, and my daughter I took her on a trip with me. Um, and this is gonna be real funny. I guess she knew Future just because she was around. She didn't know how big of a star he was. It was that moment. And it was one other. Um, so she walked out and saw the crowd. We're in a stadium, and it's maybe 30, 40,000 people there, and they're all singing every word. And my daughter looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, Daddy, we're gonna be rich." And I'm like, that we're not gonna put that with that, but she realized just how, it's innocence of, maybe I think she was 10, 11 years old at the time. Um, so her just experiencing that, like, man, I'm backstage and hanging out with him, and we, talk and, whatever the case may be, just being around went a long way. And I think she had that same experience with OutKast. And my son with OutKast as well. So just being part of the Dungeon family and Organized Noise, being around Big Boy and Dre, even me for that matter. Sometimes you forget that they're the biggest selling rap group of all time. Um, and the Grammy Award for Album of the Year, those things are huge. They're being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I can pick up the phone, call them right now, or my kids see them and they'll come up and speak to my kids and you know, but they're obviously, they're regular people anyway, but we just don't, my kids don't see them as stars. And sometimes I don't either have to pinch myself like, wow, am I really able to do this as a living? Same thing. That goes a long way too. I think having to have worked as an intern, and I was a street team guy. I would be outside passing out flyers. I went on tours and didn't have hotel rooms. I had to sleep in the van with merch. Um, but being able to do this for a living and not have an additional job kind of goes a long way. That's a huge accomplishment in itself, I guess for me, because it wasn't the era of technology where you just go online, Google, and apply for jobs and whatnot. You had to be on the scene, be known. People had to see you. there wasn't as many background checks as there are now. You had to actually be around where people can vouch for you. Like, yeah, we know him. He's been, to this club this many days, or he's been around on the scene.
Outstanding. And what do you want your legacy to be?
Man, so I go back to I want to be known as the guy who always did fair business. I think we don't have enough of that in within the music industry, so to speak. And my big brother Rico Wade, that's something that he and just emphasized. You never heard of OutKast or Goodie Mob accusing him of stealing anything or taking anything, any of the groups that he's ever been associated with, even me for that matter. Like he would give us the shirt off his backs in any business dealings he's ever done or had. So I want to kind of, live up to his legacy and what he expected of me when he kind of put his arm around me as an executive within the music industry.
That's really great. And what inspires you daily?
Oh man, the new kids in music, discover, the creativeness of how creative these kids are. With technology now, the sky's the limit. And it's funny, there's a big argument within the community now about gatekeepers. Um, and I like the fact that there aren't any. I was a kid that was on the outside, kind of coming up. So by the grace of hard work, I was able to get inside because I was never one of, I'm a project kid. We grew up extremely poor. I wasn't talented either. So I'm not talented. I don't, I can play, but I don't play very well. I'm not the super creative, I'm even marketing promo. I just outworked a lot of people. I think I'm intelligent enough to know business. So in the side of how to maneuver through a couple of things, I figured that out. But having the gatekeepers kept so many people out of being able to kind of get inside of the industry and the business. Now, man, I'll give you a prime example, Crime Mob. That group, Little J produced his album on a laptop his parents bought him for, I believe, $100. He stole a Fruity Loops program. I think it was a bootleg copy of it. They produced that first album on that laptop. So for
Wow.
basically 200, maybe $250, they were able to produce a whole album in his house, and a major record label discovered it and put it out. And nowadays in this era, so many kids can do that. You could be at Walmart, stocking shelves and sitting at home, using your laptop and upload your song, and within, 24 hours, somebody's created a TikTok craze on it, and every major, everyone's calling you in that moment. You know, at one time, you had to go into a professional studio, record the music. You had to get a manager, an attorney who knew someone at a record label to get you a meeting. Those things, or had to go to a DJ to kind of have a DJ, co-sign you if he didn't like it. You didn't kind of get out there. Now, direct to consumer is where the business is, and I think any business for that matter. As far as you can go with music direct to consumer, I think that's the way to go.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's great. Okay, if you were 18 again and you could change anything, could be personally or professionally, what would you change?
You said if I was eight,
If you were 18 again and you could change anything,
oh,
it could be
18.
personally, yeah, personally or
Man,
professionally, what would you change?
that's an incredible question. Oh man. It's crazy because I think everything that I went through, I really enjoyed it because I learned so much. But um, my access of how I approach things, again, I outworked a lot of people to kind of get to where I am, but it could have been easier. So I would love for it to have been easier. Research. I give you prime a thought of. Young producer that I knew. I called myself managing him, took him to a meeting with this publishing company, and I had no idea what publishing was. Went into the meeting, they loved what they heard and was like, okay, cool, what do you guys want? We're ready to do a deal right now. And I'm like, I have no fucking idea. I don't even know what publishing is. Oh, excuse my language.
Yeah,
Um, so, being able to, I think I would have been a lot further along, a lot faster if I would have put down working hard on the passing out flyers, getting to know the DJs. Again, I went through my path, but if I would have sat down and studied a little more the deal making and whatnot, I think I could have been a lot further, a lot faster. I eventually got there though,
you definitely
and I
got
would have had a
there.
lot more money. Yeah, and one other thing. not having as much of a conscience as I do. Shout out to Yolanda Carter, my attorney. She sometimes will get on my case. It's funny. It was one deal, I was looking to do with someone. It was something I was trying to bring personally to myself, and she was like, "You're not gonna do it," because it took me kind of not necessarily doing an unsavory deal with that individual, but I just in my heart I knew there were certain things I couldn't do for him. I could have signed him, tied him up, and made a boatload of money off of it eventually, but I didn't do so, and sometimes I regret not. I would do that over again of not having the conscience that I do now,
Oh, it
but I
speaks
do.
for
So
yeah,
yeah,
speaks volumes of your personality.
thank you, thank you.
Orlando, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I do appreciate it. I really thoroughly enjoyed interviewing and listening to obviously your experience and everything. And yeah, I wish you nothing but the best in the future.
No, same here. Thank you, Nick. I loved it. Enjoyed it a lot.
Not as much as I loved it. Thank you.